Russia is celebrating what's known as Victory Day today. The event marks the defeat of Nazi Germany in World War II and commemorates the tens of millions of Russians who died during that conflict.
Earlier this morning, Russian President Vladimir Putin delivered a speech in Moscow during the military parade, with the war in Ukraine, though, of course, casting a shadow over the occasion. NBC News reporter Matt Bodner joins us now for more on this. Hi, Matt. Good morning. So walk us through some of the main things that we heard from Putin in this speech. What did he say?
Savannah, good morning. Well, we heard a lot from Vladimir Putin this morning. This is kind of his day to appear to be a very tough leader, and he always relishes in that opportunity. So today we heard things like civilization is at a turning point, on the brink, if you will, and a real war has been unleashed on Russia. So we saw a lot of that kind of rhetoric, painting Russia as on the defensive. Now, this has really been a cornerstone of Vladimir Putin's talking points for years. Of course, these kinds of messages are kind of heightened amid the war in Ukraine. Some of the other highlights I want to share with you guys being comments such as saying the catastrophe that Ukraine is experiencing right now is the product of the West's greedy, corrupt plans to sort of suffocate anything it perceives as the other. So it's just a lot of very incendiary rhetoric. I do think it's important to note, while looking at these kinds of comments, that they are, I would say, rather similar to things we've heard from Vladimir Putin over the past 18 months, but also noteworthy what we didn't hear. And I think coming less than a week after drones were exploding over the Kremlin, claims of an assassination attempt, possibly with Western involvement, we didn't hear very much of that from President Putin today. So I think you could, if you wanted to, make the argument that we got restrained Vladimir Putin today.
So, Matt, we understand, some parades were called off in some cities. Other events, including the main one in Moscow, were scaled down. Why was that? Well, I think there's a few reasons for it. The one that we keep seeing from the Russians, or at least hints of it, is that there were security concerns. Obviously, I mentioned that there was a drone strike on the Kremlin last week. There was a lot of fuss around that. But there have been drone strikes and other incidents happening across Russia. So we actually saw in dozens of Russian cities, this parade was effectively canceled. They did not happen in many places. And that's a really big deal. This parade is kind of the cornerstone of the Kremlin's domestic narrative, its domestic propaganda machine. And it's a little bit like, I mean, what kind of conversations would we be having if suddenly July 4th was canceled across half of the United States? So there's definitely an apparent security concern going on. But when you look at the Moscow Victory Day parade, now, for years now, especially the Moscow Victory Day parade has been kind of the annual showpiece for the entire Russian military, especially where I think President Putin would like to show off the very latest and greatest, but also some of the old weapons. The Russian Air Force was not present at the Victory Day parade in Moscow today. We only saw one tank, and that was a tank from the Second World War. So there's definitely, clearly, some kind of equipment issue going on for the parade, and it doesn't portray the same kind of confidence that we've seen in years past.
Matt, this is playing out amid another wave of missile strikes aimed at Kyiv overnight. Tell us what's happening in Ukraine and how they are marking the day there, again, Victory Day.
Sure. Well, so obviously there was yet another missile strike, drone strike from Russia, as we've seen in recent days. It appears to have been smaller than some of the ones we've seen in recent days. But I'd say, how is Ukraine celebrating today? They're not. One of the most interesting things they've done is actually in the past few days, President Zelensky called to move Ukraine's holiday. Typically, I guess I should say, in the Soviet Union, Victory Day was celebrated on May 9th. But in the West, we celebrate Victory in Europe Day on May 8th. And this has kind of been a bit of contention between the two sides, the former allies, the entire time. Ukraine actually moved their celebration from May 9th to May 8th this year. And I think if you're familiar with kind of the historiography of the region, it's a very symbolic move.
Matt Bodner, thank you very much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.